In this video, we're going to take a look at Sampler, the big brother to Simpler. And so if I double click on Sampler, I load up a blank sampler in this MIDI track. And again, we have a black box that says drop sample here. And I'm going to go to a sample I have pre-selected called Phantasm. And there it is. Now, there are a lot of the same controls that you find in Sampler, but there are even more. So first, I can play this with my MIDI keyboard now that it's loaded up. Let's hear what the sample sounds like before we mess around with it. It's kind of an interesting sound. There is a dedicated reverse button, and if I play that, the waveform does not change visually, but it will now play in reverse. And that's kind of neat. The snapping button does the exact same thing it does in Simpler. It minimizes the pops and clicks by trying to cut the sample at the zero crossing point. You can change the root note of the sample. So if you wanted the note G to be like the primary untransposed note, you could do that. You can also detune the sample. And then you have this scale setting. And what this does is it makes it so you can adjust the transposition of the sample in relation to the piano keyboard. So right now, if I play one note higher, it plays one note higher. I could adjust that so it doesn't do that. And the reason you might want to do that is, for instance, if you had a drum sample and you wanted it to be on a certain note and you wanted to play other notes along with it, but you didn't want to transpose the pitch of like a snare or a kick, then that's where the scale setting would come in handy. There are volume and pan controls, and there are sample start and sample end controls, much like in Simpler. If I boost that up, you can see it adjusts the sample start and the sample end. And then if I go here, I can see the sustain mode. Right now it's in one shot mode. So if I press a key, it just goes one shot. The other modes are different looping modes. The one with arrows pointing both forward, it will loop forward continuously. And you can see that there are independent loop markers here in addition to the start markers. So let's make those the same. If I press this button, then it will go back and forth in a loop. And I can adjust those loop markers with these controls. So that it will start playing from the play start marker and then it will loop inside here. I can also link those two together if I want, and it will make that adjustment. There's a crossfade control if you want to ease the transition between loops. You don't get that sort of hiccup at the beginning of the loop. And you can detune the sample with this control. Remember, 50 cents is a half step. There's an interpolation here, which is kind of an algorithm describing how the computer handles the sample. The higher the mode, for instance, best interpolation, you're going to use more computer processing power. I just leave mine on normal most of the time. You can choose to load the sample from RAM, and you can choose to look at the sample in different ways. We're looking at both channels right now. We could look at it as one wave, just the left or just the right channel. I choose to leave it on both. We can also adjust the zoom level. This does not change the volume level. It's just a visual tool. This is great if you have like a really, really ultra quiet sample and you don't want to be louder, but you do need to look at it. In the next video, we're going to take a look at some of these other tabs and the controls they offer in Sampler.